Okay. I will officially call the meeting to order. Julie, would you have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Here.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom, Mr. Bergstrom,
I saw him
there he
someplace.
is. There he is. Mr. Peterson
Here.
and Miss Goodman is not on yet.
Correct, she is not on yet.
Okay.
Okay, Barry, when she clicks in there, just interrupt and do what you have to do to pull her in, okay?
She is joining now.
Okay.
Hey, Karen. We're just doing the roll call. Are you here?
Karen, you are muted.
All right, I'm all set.
All right.
Hello, Karen.
Hello.
Okay. We're through with the roll call. Everybody has gotten a copy of today's agenda. Is it, any changes need to be done, or is it okay the way it's presented?
I don't know any changes.
Okay, do I hear a motion to accept it the way it is?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. Julie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yep. Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Miss Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom. You're muted, Mark. You're muted. We can't hear you, Mark. On the top, do you see where there's the microphone that says mute? Shake your head yes or no, Mark. Are you on the iPad?
There we go. How's
There you
that?
Got it, Mark, thank you.
All right. All right, I'm gonna close
Okay.
on this. And then just, okay. Okay. What did I do? Oh, here we go.
Mark, do you have Zoom going on your computer and your iPad?
Yeah, I do, yeah. So I'm doing too
Okay.
much.
Yeah,
So-
I would go ahead and probably turn it off on your iPad. Or I'm
Okay.
sorry, on your laptop, turn it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I already disconnected the second one, so he should be fine.
All right.
Okay, you should be okay.
Okay, so you can hear me okay now, right?
We can
Yes.
hear you loud and clear, Mark.
All
And
right,
do you
super.
approve, Mark, do you approve the agenda as presented?
I do.
Okay. We're all set, Mr.
Okay.
Hawk.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving forward, no public comment, at least I haven't heard of any, and we'll go forward with that. Next, moving on to the minutes, to July 2020 minutes. I assume everybody has had a copy of that, or seen a copy of it, has had a chance to review it, and if it looks okay, I would like to go ahead and have a motion to approve as presented.
Make the motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Julie, did you get that?
I did. That was Mr. Gentili, the second, correct?
I believe so.
No, it was not.
Oh, it was
No.
not?
Phil,
Phil?
Okay,
you can't see me.
okay. I'm all set.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Dance,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, moving forward to the July 2020 accounts payable. I assume everybody's gotten a copy of that, had a chance to review it. And if there's any questions, I open up the floor to any questions or comments. I myself have none.
I'll move we approve accounts payable for July 2020.
Do I hear a second? Okay. Julia, vote, please. Roll call.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Dents,
Yes.
Mr. Haw.
Yes.
Okay.
Next up is the July 2020 financial statement and revenue and expenses, trial balance sheet, et cetera. I assume everybody's got a copy of that and has a chance to review it. I will ask for any comments, corrections, if need be. I didn't see anything jumping out at on my end when I was reviewing it.
The only thing I would say about the report is that negative 48,000 on the very bottom. Most of that's from the land acquisition of the 44,134, which we'll be getting reimbursed back for.
Okay.
But other than that, I mean, without that, we'd be pretty close to what we budgeted for. If you look at the year-to-date balance.
Right, I see the 48,696.19.
Yeah.
So Barry, do you have any idea when we're gonna get that?
I do not know.
Okay.
But
But I know it,
I would anticipate it by the end of the fiscal year, so by the end of September.
okay. But it's in the pipeline, so we're all set.
Yep.
Any other comments? If not, do I hear a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make that motion. Mark Bergstrom.
Mark, thank
Second.
you. Do I hear a second?
Second, Gentili.
Okay. Julia, roll call, please.
Mr. Dents,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to committee reports and discussion. The only thing I might mention on executive committee, I did make a phone call to the other two members besides myself of the committee to let them know what I was gonna do with, our airport attorney with respect to the contracts for the airport. I'm mentioning that because I just want to make sure everything is above board. To my knowledge, the budget committee did not meet, and the capital projects committee did not meet. Any questions with respect to item 7 on the agenda?
I have actually two questions. One is, as it relates to the budget committee, we are in August. We need to adopt a final budget at our next meeting. And I know the county commissioners had a budget work session on Friday. I'm curious as to where we stand with our draft budget, both here as well as at the county level.
The $6,000 that was requested additional has not made the cut. And I guess what I can tell you in regard to that is my thought process was, in light of the COVID with the funding and also the $30,000 grant coming that we have in the pipeline recently, it was allowed us to do that. At least that was my take on it.
Okay, so that's, Jeff, that's firm then?
Well, I would say it's probably, yeah, we'll be okay budget-wise
Yes, we
if
will
the
be.
reimbursements come in that are supposed to come in for the COVID. And again, that's for the next fiscal year,
Right,
2021.
right.
With that,
Okay.
I would request that the budget committee meets before the next meeting to figure out how the budget needs to be adjusted for that change in the county contribution. It shouldn't be much of a change, but that committee should be handling that between now and next meeting.
Okay, we can do that. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and not set it up at this meeting, but to look at the calendar and give each of the budget committee members a call and set it up from there with you in the mix, Barry.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Anything else?
My second question would fall under the Capital Projects Committee. And this is really more of an update. I didn't include it in my report because I assumed we'd be talking about it here. As it relates to the action last month by the board to acquire Mr. Aaron's hangar, that agreement was fully executed. So as of August 1st, we now have ownership of that hangar. I've been in communication with Joe Sprague from Cadillac, who has expressed interest in utilizing that hangar for his business. I've also had one conversation with Cape Air on their needs. Cape Air is they will have an advanced team here tomorrow, which will be their first on-site, their first time on site. I've kind of already briefed them on the situation with hangar space. So they're coming in, and that's one of the agenda items that they will be both looking at and trying to come up with some things. So both the parties that I know have interest in utilizing that hangar, I've been in contact with, and I hope after the next couple days with Cape Air, I'll be able to put together a plan as to how to move forward and what next steps may be as it relates to the issues with the door and what maybe a longer term options are for that hangar to bring back to the board. So I just wanted to give that update.
Barry, do you know what time they're gonna show up tomorrow?
I was on a call with them just before this meeting, and it looks like they will be here at 12:30, their scheduled time, leaving about noon the following day on Wednesday.
Okay, okay. I'm just putting it down on my notebook here. I might, if my schedule allows, I might slip on out to join you guys for a few minutes.
Yeah, and anyone else on the board who, might want to stop in and say hi to a few Cape Air people. The most senior, Andrew Bonney, really wanted to attend. He's actually very apologetic that he hasn't visited with us yet. But due to circumstances with regards to COVID and state policies in Massachusetts, if he were to come out here, he would be required to quarantine for 14 days when returning. He just can't afford to do that right now. Although 2 individuals they are sending are coming from Massachusetts and will be under that requirement when they return. But I think they're a little bit more flexible as to what they can do from home. So he apologizes for not being able to come out and visit us on this first visit.
I
What was
think
that
under
time
the
again they're gonna be here?
I'm sorry,
Say
Barry.
again?
The time, what time did you say that they were gonna be?
12:30 tomorrow, Tuesday, is their planned arrival, but they plan to be here through noon on Wednesday.
Okay. Anything else, Barry, on that subject?
Nope, that's all I have on those committee topics.
Okay, so I'll let you continue going down to your director's report.
Okay. Give me a second as I bring it up.
Okay.
Okay. So no accidents or incidents. However, we're all dealing here, all of the employees here are dealing with the fact that a very long-time employee of the airport, Jeff Wright, passed away on August 1st. And the last couple of weeks have been challenging, both just adapting to that loss, from a work perspective, but also just emotionally. And so things have been a little bit slow the last couple of weeks as we've been working through that. I have last Thursday extended an offer which was accepted to a new hire. It's currently someone who has been working in TSA. So he's a known individual to us. He's been working for TSA for a number of years. And I think his skill set will work well for what we need as it relates to basically airport operations. So unfortunately, I've got to start off my report with that. Otherwise,
I presume he's a local
yes.
person?
Yes.
Okay.
Just outside of Necma.
Oh, okay. That's pretty local.
Is this COVID related?
No, it is not.
Okay.
On the good news side, overall airport activity, other than passengers on the airline, is really little changed from a COVID impact standpoint. Our GA traffic, those that are coming in golfing, sightseeing flights, everything else that we normally are dealing with this time of year, the volumes are typical for this time of year. So I think we're fortunate that we live in an area that people still really want to come to, and it hasn't, the epidemic hasn't impacted us as it certainly has other parts of the nation as it relates to airports specifically. I think this is a case where the balance that we have between general aviation and our commercial service, while the brunt of, I think, airport impacts are on the commercial service side, balance we have with, activity in both areas, I think is helping us. I don't really have much of an update on the next bullet point with regards to our EAS eligibility. I know I heard Mr. Dantz mentioning this when he talked at the Manistee Township Board meeting, so I know it is in his mind. The only thing that I've done between last month and this month is that the number of passengers that we need to have is based on the total amount of subsidy payment in the calendar year. And the number I gave last month, which was 3,500, was based on if 100% of our subsidy had been utilized during that period. But because of the operational issues of public charters early this year, where they weren't flying or reduced flights, we've not utilized as much of the subsidy dollars as we otherwise may have. So instead of that target number needing to be about 3,500, which I reported last month, it's actually closer to 2,800. Depending on how passenger service comes back this fall and then early winter, I think is a reachable target. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be in the ballpark there of having enough passengers for that not to be an issue and not needing.
Are the feds taking that into account?
I haven't heard any discussion on this at the federal level yet. I mean, they're still bogged down in the latest pandemic relief bill, which, like many of these, is got a million other things in it and isn't necessarily yet looking at something this specific and small.
I would think down the road, there would be some concern, some discussion on that from the Fed standpoint, because everybody's in the same boat, you might say.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
And I don't have any fuel system monitor update either. So looking then at our passenger number.
Wait a minute, Barry, on the fuel system update, is the way the system is working right now, that's not hurting us, is it?
If I had a state inspector come out asking for leak reports, I would not be compliant with that. But other than that, it's operating fine.
Okay, well, I would suspect as long as we show paperwork on a paper trail showing that we've got it ordered and all that stuff, we should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Right.
So, on the passenger numbers, we were at 43% of the prior year, which is a marked improvement over April, May, and even June to an extent. So, with the 4th of July really driving a lot of demand over that period. July was okay under the circumstances. I mention it later on, but I'll repeat it here, I guess, is that August is looking to be closer to 30% of previous year. We don't have the major holiday that drives demand, and some of the things I've been mentioning is that most of the bookings occur a day in advance, 2 days, a week in advance. People are only making last minute travel decisions. No one, but few people are booking out further in advance as would be typical. So it's a little bit difficult to predict what's going to happen as we get into September, or then in October with the new carrier, Cape Air, and the changes that will happen there. So on the performance side, Ultimate Jet Charters and public charters operating as North Country Sky have been, very good now that they've got into their routine with the jet supplemented with the Beach 1900 on the extra days. So, while there were a few canceled flights, they happened to be on days where we had both aircraft operating. So passengers were minimally impacted because there was another flight that could handle them that same day.
Good.
Barry, I had kind of a question there. I was headed north and went by the airport, and there's two large airplanes there. That seemed unusual, that two large airplanes in at the same time. What was going on anyway?
Actually, this time of the year, that's common. We'll have 3, 4, 5. This morning, we've already had probably 3 come and go. That's mostly general aviation traffic. and typically golfing for Arcadia Bluffs.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Barry, have we had anybody show up expecting to get on the jet who voiced displeasure at being put in the Beach 19?
I have not heard of anyone that has expressed that. I'm sure there are people that are thinking that, but no one's reached out to me, or it hasn't become a notable objection.
Well, that's good. That's good. Just one comment, Barry, before we move away from the in-plane and deep plane. You projected 40% for July last month, and you were right on the money just about.
Well, with only 2 weeks generally left in the month, it's pretty easy to get a feeling as to where you are when half the month's under the belt. And you can look at it.
I just caught that in the minutes before or in your report last time. Anyway, go ahead.
So then moving on to airfares, and I realized I forgot to update a comment on this report. So these fares are not for August travel. They are for October travel. And specifically, the dates of purchase are October 6th, returning October 13th. And these, I chose, normally I would do September a month out, but I really wanted to start seeing, where Cape Air was. And so these are the first report that actually has Manistee Cape Air fares showing up in the report going out those 2 months. And if you look at the averages, so our average fare, $252, is the same as Muskegon's average fare, about $30 more than Traverse City, and $90, $85 more than Grand Rapids. Given what I know, and I'll go into this a little bit more later, that's actually really good. I think it will improve substantially because these don't yet really reflect American Airlines code share fares, because those just came online last Friday night. And right now, American just kind of has placeholder fares in there because they're actually in the middle of doing a transition from one revenue management system to another. So we're like a little annoying gnat in they're changing their whole fare calculating structure for all of their flights. So they were kind enough to basically put in some kind of placeholder fares that are reasonable, so we can kind of see how the system works. But they're higher than I would anticipate once the dust settles. So, and I'll talk a little bit more of some of those details later in my report. But it is interesting that, the fares are close enough now between the airports that when you start taking into account things like travel time, travel distance, parking, we really are competitive now with a product that is, nearly identical across the different travel options in the region. So, any questions on that for right now?
None for me.
Okay, capital project updates. So, under new business, there are change orders for the basically finishing the capital improvement project. One of those you've previously approved. It was change order 2, but there was that version had the wrong project number on it, so they had to generate a new version. So there's kind of basically a technicality on that one. That's why you're seeing that one again. And then change order 3 is the final wrap-up change order that basically completes that project, and adjusts all the numbers to the actuals. So those are coming up later in the agenda for approval. Our ALP update project, which is kind of the next project in line, no update there. PFAS testing. So this is the special grant that we have been theoretically awarded, and to do testing of our facility to determine the scope of any potential contamination. Earlier this month, we had a joint meeting, which was called by Eagle, who is kind of overseeing these projects, even though the funding and kind of the grant administration is happening through MDOT. Prina Newhoff is going to be doing the work. They're the one who we will be contracting with to do the work. And then obviously myself. And it became clear, so there's a push to get all of these grants and contracts executed by the end of the fiscal year. But it's clear in a meeting that we had in early August that we're not even close to having agreement between Eagle and MDOT on what we should be even including in these contracts and agreements. But they're confident that they will be able to straighten everything out and figure out what it is they want the contracts to say and what they want the work to entail. But they still want everything approved by MDOT Aeronautics by their September meeting. So since we don't even have anything yet, we may need to have a special board meeting to approve this just prior to our next meeting, depending on the timing of our next meeting, MDOT Aeronautics Commission meeting, etc. So I'm just kind of giving you a heads up that this is moving, but beyond things beyond my control. We may need a special meeting to approve a grant agreement next month. So I hope that long-winded explanation made sense.
Well, keep us posted, Barry, so that we can go ahead and move on that in a timely manner.
My experience is sometimes with these things, I get notice and they say, okay, we need that approved in 2 days. And it's like, it worked that way.
We'll see if we can do it. If we can do it, we can. If we can't, we can't.
Right, exactly. Overall, things have been operating smoothly with the air carrier, with North Country Sky through the summer. They've just kind of finalized what their post-Labor Day schedule, so kind of the last 3 weeks of their contract are going to look like. And they're going to be ending the second flight on the Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday after Labor Day. So post that, we will just have one flight a day. Some days it will be with the jet, some days it'll be with the 1900. But that will kind of end out their contract through September. And in general, the percentage loads we're seeing are fairly close following the national averages. This is kind of a recap of things I've already talked about. But I will mention that I just was talking about nationwide averages. Kind of post 4th of July, things kind of, the improvement that we were seeing through June at about a 25 to 30% of previous year. As COVID cases were rising in the South and other areas of the country, that kind of had a chilling effect again on air transportation. But for about the last week, 10 days, we've started again to see an uptick versus previous weeks. So, the last week we've been trending north of that 30%. Today's number, which would actually be yesterday's travel day, was at 33% of a year ago. So I think we're starting to see a continued improvement in travel nationwide, slowly beginning a path to recovery, pending any future upticks in cases and or other things that may depress travel again. So, if you're aware, DOT finally awarded the EAS contract to Cape Air on July 27th. That was formally announced via a press release, as well as we sent out an email newsletter to all of our 10,000 contacts with that information. Basically a week later, on August 4th, we wanted to wait until people could actually purchase tickets before, sending out any PR, because if, someone got news and then went online and said, well, I don't see anything. So we wanted to, and that took about a week to get kind of ticket sales in process. But since August 4th, on both flymanistee.com and capeair.com, you can purchase Manistee to Chicago tickets. And I'll stop there because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Cape Air transition. So we're working together on their service start date. I mentioned earlier they're on site the next 2 days. They currently have seats available for sale through June of 2021. Their standard model is they are open for sales out 10 months. So basically 10 months from mid-August takes you into mid-June. The American Airlines code started working Friday night. As I mentioned earlier, we're waiting on the final fares. They kind of have what I would call kind of placeholder fares. If it was actually, I don't know, frustrating, interesting last week to watch American kind of implement this over time. So I mentioned that on August 4th was when tickets originally went on sale on Cape Air's website. That was followed a couple days later by tickets being for sale on American Airlines website, but not as code share, just as combining what's called interline, combining a Cape Air flight with an American flight because they have the agreements in place. You could start purchasing those on American Airlines website a few days after they went up for sale locally. Then as American was working towards the code share, they implemented the code share flights. So these are flights who have a flight number in the American system of AA83 something something instead of Cape Air's flight number. So it's actually a code share. It's actually got American Airlines code on that flight. But when they did that, they didn't have in place any fares loaded other than really placeholder fares, which were their first class fares. So when they made that change suddenly on American Airlines, everything priced out at $5,000 or more round trip coming from Manistee.
Wow.
Which was basically a first fare in American. So that was kind of like, well, that's kind of not, I don't really want to be doing any marketing and pushing people to American Airlines website right now, if that's what they're going to see. On Friday night, they got more fares loaded that are more reasonable. Although I mentioned earlier, I call them placeholders because right now the code share flight fares are more expensive than the interline fares. So if you take the Cape Air fare plus the American fare out of Chicago, add them together, which you can still purchase, that is less expensive than just the All American Airlines through fare. So these things are working their way through the system. In a conversation I had last Friday with the gentleman at Cape Air who kind of works on this area with their partners, American, United, and others, he said that typically getting a code share through American Airlines, that's 90 to 120 day process. And under the current circumstances, American did it in 20 days. So, you know, American is jumping through some hoops to help Cape Air here. And
Well, maybe, are you working tomorrow?
so I
Can't
think
take that class out. I don't have anything going on tomorrow, so you can come over.
it's on the way.
It'll only take 5 minutes. Sure. Okay, love you.
So that brings me to my next item. So United Airlines. So United Airlines is also a Cape Air partner, and they're not doing a code share with United Airlines, but just the interline. But at first, I was suspecting there might be some, I'll call them issues, but I couldn't actually book a fare from Manistee on United Airlines website to verify. United fixed that probably a week ago so that you can actually go on United Airlines website and book Manistee to Denver, and it will interline or bundle the Cape Air flight plus the United flight. The problem that we're trying to resolve is that the fares that United have made available for this interline are generally about 3 times as expensive as what American is making available. And specifically, I've been testing because on the 1st of August, Ironwood, Michigan came online with Boutique, which is a United partner, going into O'Hare. So I can kind of compare fares out of Ironwood versus fares out of Manistee on United, both being interline fares, and kind of see difference in pricing. And a fare out of Ironwood that United will price at $100, Manistee prices at like $400. In digging a little deeper,
What's going on that?
in digging a little deeper, the fare rules for these good fares say that they're only valid on United, Air Canada, Boutique, and Silver Airways. So Cape Air is working with United to find out why is the Cape Air partnership not as worthy of access to these fares.
Good question.
They're working through that. I don't know when and if it will be resolved, but I've definitely made Cape Air aware. And some of these things that I'm bringing up to them aren't things that they've necessarily been aware of, because they've up till now only had one city operating into O'Hare, and all of the other hubs that they serve aren't prominent United hubs. So therefore, this problem has probably been there for a while, but really didn't get any visibility until I'm like saying, hey, here is United hub. Why is United not, showing up at a reasonable price? So we're working through.
Barry, is there really much coming out of Ironwood? I mean, are we talking about 2 or 3 people, or are we talking about 23 people?
Historically, Ironwood has had about the same number of passengers as we have.
Oh,
So, they're comparable size from a a standpoint as we are as far as passenger numbers. They don't have the same summer surge like we do. They're a little more balanced year round. So I think, you know, flights there are used less for a tourism standpoint and more for just local travel, business, and those types of things that are more balanced year round.
Okay.
On the marketing side, we had a couple meetings last week, and we kind of have now our kind of end of the fiscal year, end of public charters, North Country Sky contract. We're basically winding down marketing spend on that service. We still do have a limited amount of Google AdWords running. We've got a final Facebook ad push that'll basically run the next 2 weeks, kind of the rest of this month. We've planned one more email newsletter to be sent out. And then we basically plan to stop all North Country Sky marketing after Labor Day, which will allow us to then switch. I mean, you know, part of us, we just want to start, you know, pushing Cape Air, but at the same time, we need passengers to be booking and flying, you know, the rest of this month and next month because this is still peak summer. So we're trying to balance those competing efforts at the same time, trying not to confuse people as to what's going on. So that's kind of the plan we're working under right now. Already mentioned the Cape Air press release, and kind of, I've been mentioning this for a while now as part of the new service. We will have a new website. The current plan, the plan had been to try to, you know, launch the first version of that on September 1st. That's getting pushed back to September 15th. That first version, out of necessity, will still have kind of a mix of North Country Sky because people will have 2 weeks left, and but so there'll be kind of paid releases as we go through September into October on that new website. This is something that I got in email yesterday. There's an email thing called the Traverse City Ticker, which I subscribe to, and occasionally they have interesting tidbits about the Traverse City Airport. And this was one that really jumped out at me. You think of our region as historically, for a variety of reasons, being a Delta stronghold. And if you look at those numbers from July of a year ago, July of 2019, those are the passengers out of Traverse City that flew Delta. That number a year ago, 46,000 passengers on Delta and 26,000 on American. And that's kind of been the balance, although I think American's been slowly growing over the last couple of years because they've been adding a lot of capacity in Traverse City and a lot of direct flights. I mean, they now have direct flights to Dallas, they've probably been doing that about 3 years or so. But historically, if you go back 5 or more years, Delta in the summer would have 5-6 flights a day to, you know, Detroit and Minneapolis, and American would have 2 a day to Chicago, and United would have 2 a day to Chicago. And that was kind of the summer schedule. American is now got a lot more than that with daily flights to Dallas, et cetera. But what's really fascinating is July of this year, you look at that Delta number of 8,000 passengers and American's number of 17,000. This really...
Quite a significant flip-flop, isn't it?
It's amazing, actually. It really shows what American is trying to do during the pandemic. They're using this as a opportunity to grab market share in markets that they are interested in, and they've been interested in Northern Michigan for a while now, based on just the increase they've been doing over the last couple of years. at the expense of their competitors. Now, there are obviously financial ramifications to that, you know, they're taking probably a hit in profitability to do that. But that's, you know, that's if, and I don't suspect that, you know, once things start returning more to normal, that Delta's not going to come back. But I think that strategy of American may have some payoff for them longer term that will be lasting beyond the pandemic. And as you think about it now, as it relates to Manistee, I actually think that is helpful for us, because if American becomes more of a thing in the mindset of people in Northern Michigan, the fact that we now have American flights, I think just makes us more on the map as an option. And also, I think it helps American because now they can say, oh, we've got 2 airports in Northern Michigan that we fly into instead of just 1, because prior to our start of service, you know, there's nothing else in Northern Michigan that American flew into. So I think there's some interesting things here that I'm curious to see how they develop. So I think that is the last page of my report. I do have one other thing to mention, and that was a call I got, again, just before this meeting from Cape Air. And they called me to let me know something that basically they're dealing with today, and they didn't want me to hear about it through other means. But their new aircraft, the Tecnam, is basically not operating today because they are waiting on a approval from the FAA to allow that airplane to fly again. And, you know, I say all of that and that sounds, well, what's going on? And that was actually some of my first questions to them.
Yes.
But to put this into perspective is all of you probably are aware of the Boeing 737 MAX certification problems that occurred. That aircraft basically was pulled from certification and now has basically been grounded for probably a year and a half. As a result of the investigation into how some of the issues occurred in that, the FAA is completely changing how they do new aircraft certification. And the Tecnam is a new aircraft, and you know it's basically in its first year of operation. So they're gathering lots of data during this initial year, and all that data is going back to the manufacturer and the FAA. And in that process, there are certain check boxes that have to be checked. And if you can imagine a process that used to be the FAA relied mostly on the manufacturer to do the bulk of the work, based on the changes being implemented by the FAA, a lot of that work is now on the FAA's shoulder. Given a pandemic where many workers of the FAA are not working, are working different hours and in different environments because they're home still, they're just way, way behind on a lot of things. And that finally caught up with Tecnam, and it has had this impact on Cape Air where an approval didn't come in time for them to operate the aircraft this morning. They anticipate it's just a 24-hour hiccup, but I was very appreciative that they reached out to me because I think it bodes well for how they communicate as they, you know, deal with, you know, not only good things, but, you know, hiccups that occur. So I just wanted to pass that on because that's something that, you might hear about in the press if you happen to Google airport and airline stuff. Google is going to be good about funneling you information about things like this, and that just might pop up in a news feed or something that you might be listening or reading. So,
Barry, I know that they had 2 crashes. I don't know how many they have more than 2.
When you say they, are you talking Boeing on the 737 MAX?
That's correct. Yeah, I think one went out of Egypt, and there was another one. I don't know where it was, but
There were on that topic. There were 2. There's been nothing like that on the Technam front. No accidents or incidents. This is more of just a process challenge with workload and resources to get things approved.
Okay.
Anyone doesn't have any questions? That's my report.
Well, thank you, Barry. Those 2 bits were kind of nice. You read through in there. Okay, moving on. Old business, unfinished business. I don't believe we have. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going back to airport directors meeting. I've got one comment, one question over here. Under other, Barry. Jason Allen was mentioned last time with the USDA Rural Development.
Yep.
Anything come about with that? I think he was supposed to be August 5 up to the casino here or something like that.
My understanding was that meeting got canceled, but maybe I misunderstood that. There were things that were scheduled and then didn't happen. So no, I have not had any follow-up meetings with him on that.
Okay, because I know at the last time it was kind of tentative, so I was just curious. I saw that in my notes and saw it from last time. Okay, moving on.
That meeting did take place.
Oh, it did?
Oh, it did?
Yeah. And that was over on, that had entirely to do with the Gateway project. But if we need to have a meeting with something specific, just need to get an outline and I will contact them and we get something put together.
Yep. Okay.
Jeff, what was that meeting about? I didn't catch that.
The Gateway project in Manistee.
Well, okay. Okay, moving on again to old business, unfinished business. I'm not aware of any unless somebody has something that they want to add at this point in time on item 9. If not, we'll move on to new business. With respect to the new business, items A, B, and C are all pretty close together. And I hope everybody did get a copy of the contracts and my cover note and has had a chance to somewhat review them. I tried to, in my cover notes, tried to point out what was changed from the old original contract, or the contract, I should say, that's in existence right now. These contracts that you've got cleaned up some of the places in the contract that were redundant, added a few things that Andrew had pointed out in one of our discussion meetings, and with respect, and changed the title of the Part 139 Administrative Service Contract to Administrative and Service Contract, because I thought that was more fitting than what it was called in the past, where it was just administrative contract. And on the fixed-based operator agreement, took out a few words on paragraph 14, where it went from normal to abnormal operations, which was kind of confusing. And that's about it for the moment. Any comments, questions?
I have one comment, and that is, it talks about concern, or I guess right down to the key thing that I see is maybe missing, and it may not be. I don't see any insurance policies there that are related to any problems that might develop. Is there a reason for that or not?
Oh, insurance policy should be coming up on the fixed-based operator, Mark.
Okay,
There's also a mention of it in the airport director's agreement. But that is, if the insurance policy is coming through fixed-based operator agreement, per George, if my understanding was right, that should then adequate to also cover the airport director agreement. The only thing that would help on coverage in the airport director agreement would be the, not the insurance policy, but workman's comp. So as long as that's in place for the airport director agreement, and then the insurance policy on the fixed-based operator agreement, George felt pretty comfortable in those covering things like you're talking about, Mark.
okay, yeah, number 9 is insurance, it says, and it's on Orchard Beach Aviation as an independent contractor agrees to indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the airport from any and all liability arising out of or in any way related to Orchard Beach Aviation's performance of services during the term of this agreement, including any liability resulting from intentional or reckless acts of the employees or agents of Orchard Beach. So, it says that they'll cover it, but let's say that they don't have the funds to cover this. So shouldn't there be some sort of an insurance policy to back this up a little bit, or is it in there and I don't see it?
It's in the fixed-based operator agreement there. It's $1 million insurance policy there.
It is. Okay, well then it's
Right.
covered. Then it's covered. Okay, thank you. I missed it.
The only, the fixed-based operator agreement really basically stayed pretty close to what it was prior to the minor changes I made. The airport director agreement had, if you looked at the old one, it had page 1, which was almost, and then you go on to page 2. Page 2 was almost a repeat of page 1. They were redundant.
Uh-huh.
So everything is covered there that was there before. It just doesn't repeat itself, and it's cleaner.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it is cleaner, and I think it's well done, and I'm sure it took some time to do that, too. That's the only thing. I read through it, and I thought it was very good,
Okay.
except, again, I thought, is there some sort of insurance coverage on that? So it sounds like there is.
There is.
Okay, thank you.
As I said, it still has the insurance covered that has been in existence with previous contracts. It's
Okay.
just that some of the verbiage in there was kind of confusing
Yeah,
and redundant.
yeah. Well, thanks for
So-
cleaning it up, too.
Well, next time around, there might be some other things that somebody else will look at and so on, but I know I spent quite a bit of time going back and forth with George and the other folks that have contributed comments and so on.
It's well done. You did a nice job.
So anyway, if there's no other comments and so on, I will probably, I'm going to request a approval to go ahead and have Barry move through these and sign off on them for another year of service.
I'll make that motion to approve the,
Julie, should we make a motion for each one or combine them as a bundle here?
I combined it, but I don't know which is the best way to go.
Barry,
Okay.
what do you think? I think we usually do 3 separate motions, don't we?
Typically, we do.
Okay.
Okay. I would then like to have a motion to approve the airport director contract as presented
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay.
Who was at the second?
Andrew.
Okay.
Julie, can we have a roll call on that, please?
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Dunce,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to Part 139 contract. Could I have a motion to approve that as presented?
I'll make a motion as presented to approve.
Okay, I will second that. Julie, can you have a roll call on that? Part
Yep.
139, right?
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Dunce.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the fixed base operator agreement. Could I have an approval or a motion to approve the fixed base operator contract agreement as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Julie, could we have a roll call on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Dunce,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergstrom.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, folks, on that. Barry, we're going to move it back to you on change orders for the runway repaving and other items that you attached to the agenda this time.
I talked about these a bit earlier, so change order number 2 was previously approved, but it had basically the wrong contract number on it. That was regenerated by MDOT with the correct information and is therefore up for the board's reapproval. And
Now, Barry, which one
that's change
are we?
2. So in, actually,
Which one are we talking about? We've got
let me
pieces here.
bring them up.
Okay, the first one I'm looking at here is all negative, so that's easy to approve.
Which that is number 3. So that was on the agenda. So what is A4 up here in the corner, contract modification number 2. So that is the first one of these 2. It's a in addition to the contract of $19,010, and that was for extra signage that was identified as part of our last year's airport inspection that got rolled into this project from a funding standpoint.
We approved that, if I recall. Now, why?
But again,
What is this now?
contract number was wrong on that document.
Okay, okay.
So that is what contract modification number 2 is. Number 3, as you point out, is basically mostly negative numbers that are aligning the contract with the actual quantities utilized for the project. So it's basically generating a reduction of that almost $14,000. I would request a motion to approve these 2 documents to authorize me to sign them electronically in MDOT's system.
So moved.
I will second it. Julie, would you have a roll call on that, please?
Yes, and we can do this as one, Barry?
Let's do it as two,
Okay, so,
be cautious and safe.
okay, so I'll do Mr. Dunce and Mr. Haw for the first change order. And then I'll do a
let's
roll
call
call
that-
and,
Well, the first change order, let's call that modification number 2. Correct, Barry?
you ready for a roll call?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Gentile,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
Mr. Suda,
Yes.
Mr. Dunce,
Yes.
and Ms. Goodman.
Yes.
Now we need proposal to approve contract modification number 3. Do I hear a proposal to approve that? Or
So moved.
request? Don't move it, okay. Julie, could we have a roll call on contract modification number 3?
I only heard Mr. Dunce. Was there a first and a second or just him?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay. Roll call, Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Gentile,
Yes.
Mr. Dunce,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Yes.
Mr. Haw,
Yes.
and Mr. Suda.
Yes.
Barry, does that take care of you for what you need?
It does, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Comments by any board members?
Oh, this
I
is
do-
Jeff.
oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. This is Jeff. Barry, I texted Stacy Bitework and Christina Bitka with the chamber to let them know Cape Air will be in town tomorrow through Wednesday. If they wanted to make a appointment somehow, some way. I do know they have a high interest with Cape Air, and they have discussed with, I think, Christina as far as marketing goes. The other thing of it is I will be seeing Congressman Bergman, at least should be seeing him this evening. And Barry, if you need anything for me to make requests, please contact me later. I guess that's all I've got.
Thank you, Jeff.
I wanted to let everybody know that the county website is up and running, the new county website. We do have, if you go on there, the airport authority has a page. Everybody is listed. We can add things to that if there's anything anybody wants added. Also on the bottom, there's a section called Notify Me. If you go to that, you can sign up with your email and you'll want to register for airport authority. And any of the minutes or agendas, anything like that, when it's posted, you can get notification. If there's any changes to any meetings, you can get notification as they're added to the calendar or taken off the calendar. Other features I did notice, I can add the YouTube recordings to that. So if you're ever looking for any of the recordings they're not on there yet, but they will be, you can go back and use it as a kind of where everything would be saved, easy to find, hopefully. But if you have any questions as you're looking at it or can't find something, just give me a call here at the office and I can help walk you through it.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. Any other comments by board members?
I'm not a board member, but I do have a comment if I may. I'm hopefully sharing with you American Airlines homepage. Manistee to Boston in October. Search. And of course, it always takes longer. We are seeing, let me stop right through. American Airlines flight 316 from Manistee to Chicago, combining with American Airlines flight 2264 Chicago to Boston. This is what we've been trying to get to the point of having as far as service for a number of years, and it's really nice to see Cape Air delivering on their promises. So,
Okay.
we know that there's a new game in town.
Excellent. Thank you, Barry. If nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Gary?
Thank you.